Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Think Great Experience. I am so excited for today. We have with us Holly Hoffman, who is an author, who is an absolute inspirational speaker and a survivor. And I need to clarify that because she is a contestant from the show Survivor, not just a hit show, but a worldwide phenomenon. And Holly, I just want to say welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's truly an honor to be here. I was absolutely honored when you asked me. So thank you.
Well, I am fascinated with your story. I'm fascinated with everything that you're doing to help people achieve greater results. And that's really what this show is about, making an impact and helping people achieve greatness in their life. And, that show had to be transformational for you.
It really was. It was. I'm just going to start from the beginning because I didn't expect to make it. I watched Survivor. I thought the show was fake. I would sit at home and I would be like, why is she crying? Why does she want to quit?
Yeah.
I was very judgmental. And all three of our children were off to college. And I thought, I am just going to send in an application and see if these people really call me back. Was nothing fancy. I just stood behind the camera. I had a t-shirt on, a pair of shorts, and thought, we'll see what happens. And I was totally shocked when they called me. Absolutely shocked. Flew out to LA for a casting call, made it through that, but it wasn't until the final call when they called me and told me I made it that I was like, am I really going to do this? Because
that had to be surreal. Yeah, I mean, that had to be surreal, right? You're in.
It truly was. And I'm not a camper. I'm deathly afraid of snakes. And I just thought, okay, here I go. We're just going to see what happens with this. And the day before I was supposed to leave for filming, I actually was going to back out. I thought to myself, there's no way I can do this. There's just no way. And I had a lot of greatness from the people around me, the people that supported me, family and friends, and said, if you never try, you're never going to know. And that's one of my messages as well, because sometimes we let fear, doubt, and anxiety hold us back. Yeah, and that's where we need to really push forward.
Well, your message is so important right now because we live in a world of fear and uncertainty and instability. Mm-hmm. But I got to ask you this. When did you find out you're going to go to Nicaragua? At what point in the process did they say, here's where you're going?
It was actually the season before, the finale of the season before.
So they announced it then?
Yes, okay. They announced it. And so, of course, I immediately went online and I started researching about Nicaragua because I knew, being a Survivor watcher, they would do a challenge they would ask us questions about Nicaragua. Oh, and of course they did. So I immediately went on and started studying about the country and so forth. So yeah, so I knew where I was going.
Well, and I know that you thought maybe some of it was fake beforehand. Maybe it's all scripted. I have to ask you though, you go through quite an adventure with people.
You do.
Do you actually develop friendships with them that last after the show?
Yes. You meet these people in the middle of the jungle from all walks of life, all over. We all had different personalities. And of course, when you go through the casting call, you have to take all these tests. So the casting crew, they know exactly what they're doing, which personalities are going to clash and so forth. So that's huge in the casting department. But I really thought it was fake. I thought this was totally fake. And I walked out there and it wasn't. And even though it's a game and you play this game with people and you see these people, if you make it to the end for 39 days, you do develop friendships. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever go through in your life. So you do stay in touch with these people. Yeah.
I have to imagine, as an audience or fans of the show, everybody's thought, can I do this? What if? And here you are, you did it. And you applied just to see, but there's thousands of people. I mean, I've heard hundreds of thousands of people apply for this.
Yes. My season, there were over 100,000 people that applied. And they picked 20. There was one lady on our season that she applied 17 times. So one of the hardest things is just getting on this show, getting a casting call. I know people who have received a call from the casting department and that's it. That's all they heard. That they got one call and they haven't heard back. So it is a very, very hard show to get on. Yes.
Now your season 21.
Yes, correct.
Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. And now they're up to, I think, going season 41.
Yes.
20 years later. So you went on the show 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. You've got that now. You were number 4.
I
Number
was.
4.
I was
And
the last to be voted off. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just have to ask, when Jeff's about to snuff the flame out, what was that like? What did you go through having been voted off? It's got to be rewarding that you made it so far, but there's also got to be a disappointment or a frustration that the light gets snuffed out. What was going through your head right at that moment?
Well, Erik, in the back of my mind, walking to tribal council that night, I just kind of had a feeling that I may be the one, but you don't want to admit that because you've made it to day 38. You have to make it one more day and you're in the final 3 for a chance to win $1 million. So it was heart-wrenching, but at the same time, it was bittersweet because I made it 38 days and I wanted to quit on day 5. And I never in a million years thought I would make it to day 38. On day 5, I was like, I am done. I'm out of here. So for me, it was really rewarding personally that I made it that far. And I was left with 3 young gentlemen. And the gentleman we were going to vote off won the last challenge. And then he was automatically in the final 3, that's basically why they voted me off.
Yeah.
So it was a really odd feeling. I just have never been so glad to brush my teeth and shave my legs in my entire life.
And you have to keep a good attitude through it all.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was hard because you think, I was so close, but yet so far away. Yeah. But I truly knew that when I got home, my family and friends would be so proud of me just for trying this. So many people think, I could do it. And then you get out there.
Oh, yeah.
And just imagine one set of clothes, you're thrown in a jungle, you're sleeping in the middle of nowhere, it's pouring rain. It poured 17 nights, the first 17 nights we were out there, absolute pouring rain. You're shaking uncontrollably, you're tired, you're hungry. Just imagine when you skip a meal, how you're emotional.
Well, they have a term for that now. It's called hangry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was all, I guess it was very self-satisfying.
You have to do a lot of soul searching during challenges like that.
You really do.
No, you do a lot of reflection. And I would say that even pre-pandemic, Survivor it parallels life in many ways.
It does.
And some of the things I noticed, there's people want to quit sometimes, and people want to quit in life. Mm-hmm. People get pep talks from people. We get pep talks in life. Mm-hmm. But I got to ask you, you had Coach Jimmy Johnson on the show.
Yes.
And he kind of did the pep talk 5 days in. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about, here you are in a challenge, because I'm really paralleling what we're going through in life right now, but 5 days into your challenge, you wanted to quit.
I did.
What was going through your mind just 5 days in? Why did you feel like that?
It's so hard to explain. And I think a lot of when my friends watched it back home, they said, did they make you think that way? No, I got out there and I couldn't believe it was real. And it started playing with my mind, just like when someone walks into a team meeting and it's supposed to go one way and they walk out and went the complete opposite.
Yeah.
You think, okay, where do I go from here? And that's really where I was. I got out there. This was real. There were some of these people were getting under my skin. I know that's not nice, but they were, because you're just trying to survive.
Sure.
And everything just kept building and building. And I just was done. I was like, I had it. There's no way I could do this. And Jimmy Johnson told us the very first day we were out there, he said, I'm not here to win the $1 million. I don't need it. I'm here to help others further themselves in this game.
Wow.
And I took that to heart. And some other players did not. They were like, oh yeah, he's just scheming. He's trying to, but I did. I truly took that to heart. Coach Johnson actually applied 3 times to get on the show. So he's a big Survivor fan. So when I had that sense of, or that feeling, I'm done, I want to quit, I just thought he's the only one I can really trust now, or I can talk to. And he and I went over and we sat on this log, and it was truly his words. But talk about greatness. He's a great man. Here are your chances of winning $1 million, and your goal in this game is to vote people off, and he's encouraging me to stay. That tells you a lot about his character.
Somebody that's really focused on greatness right there.
Right there.
And that became evident in the show.
It did. It really did. And he he was voted off on day 8. He lost 18 pounds in 8 days. He was very ill. He even said in his exit interview, this was the hardest thing I've ever done. I did not think it was this hard. But that is a true example. Yes, you're right, Erik, of greatness, because his true character came out, plus his leadership skills came out. And it was, I would have quit. I know I would have quit if it wasn't for Coach Johnson.
So to make it that far, at what point did you start to formulate in your head that you can do something? Or maybe was it after the show that you said, I'm going to take this experience and allow it to guide my life? Because you've been sharing your story for 10 years now.
I have. During the show, day 11 was the day where we switched tribes, and I was like,
yes,
I think this is a sign. I picked a blue rock. I became the captain of my tribe. And I think to day 11 all the time, thinking, what if? But we can't think about those what ifs. And I thought to myself, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Same with after the show. When I was voted off, Jeff Probst, he and I walked into a room and he said to me, you're going to get asked to speak. And I started laughing. And I said, Jeff, there's no way I can get up in front of people and speak. I can't. And he said, you did a complete 180. You have a story to tell. You need to tell it. And I just kind of went, okay. I just got voted off from a 38-day adventure, and I'm tired and I'm hungry.
Yeah, does he say that to everybody or what?
Yeah, I'm like, just give me some food, right? So anyway, after the show started airing, and these people started calling me and saying, we would love to have you come and speak to our organization. And I was like, I couldn't until the show was over.
Sure.
So I did book something in January, which the show was over in December. And I'll never
Jeff was right.
Yeah.
Jeff was right.
Was right. But I remember when I got that call, I called CBS and I said, I need to talk to Jeff. And they said, well, he's not here. We can't give you his number, but we can give him the message. We don't know if he's going to call. He called me.
Wow.
And I said, Jeff, you're right. I got asked to speak. I don't even know where to start. And once again, he gave me the best advice. He said, Holly, tell your story and speak from your heart.
That's awesome.
And that hit me.
Yep.
And I started speaking. I spoke for 2 years. I signed with a speaking bureau the third year.
Okay.
And ever since then, it's just taken off. And I truly believe we all have a story to tell. And my story is painful. It's funny. With some people, it really hits them because I talk about how I grew up as a child and how this show, actually, I've been a survivor all my life, and I haven't been thinking about it until You're Alone. But it changed my life. And I would have never thought in a million years I would be speaking 10 years after, but I truly believe it's the story that I tell and how I relate it back to the real world.
And your story is so powerful from the survivor standpoint that we live in a world right now. Here we are coming out of the pandemic, sort of getting into this transition phase. And for 14 months, people have felt like they're in survival mode. Mm-hmm. And what is your message to people now? Because I know you're more than just survival now, and you're sharing a message on how to thrive, not just survive. Can you share a little bit with us? Just tell the audience a little bit about your message, or how you've adapted your message to the current time we live in.
You've used every word that I'm going to speak about, Erik. So you did. But we have been in survival mode. But with survival mode comes a choice. Do we continue to stay in survival mode, or do we continue to thrive?
Yeah.
And I talk about adapting to the now. Adaptation is essential in order to move forward. And with adapting to the now, we also have a choice. Are we going to go through change? Are we going to better ourselves? Are we going to go backwards? And that's the choice.
That's right.
And between change, adapting to the now, bettering ourselves professionally and personally, those are the things that are going to help us thrive. And that's what I've done with my program now, is I talk more about change. I talk more about adapting to the now, because those are truly the important things.
Yeah.
But it is survival. But I also think that we have to think about, through the pandemic, a lot of things were taken away from us, going to the movie theaters. And I think when people get back and they get to go to the movie for the first time, they're going to go, oh my goodness, I get to go to the movies. So it's also going to make us realize the important things that we take for granted.
I mean, it really parallels your journey on Survivor. Everything was taken away from you.
Yes, yes. And it's truly, it truly makes you realize how little you can live with. That it's not about the things that you have, it's about the people you have.
Yeah.
And I'm a true believer in relationships. And I talk about in my program as well as circle. We all have a circle in life, and we need to keep that circle strong. And your circle is going to change for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You no longer,
true.
I mean, yes, you're in contact with your high school graduation class, and you still will have always have those people in your, in your circle, but they may not be the best of your friends now. You know what I'm saying?
That's
so your
right.
circle changes forever. And the important thing is keeping your circle strong.
Well, I think that, everybody has their tribe, right?
Right. That's exactly right. Yep.
And you might get voted off once in a while. I don't know. But, you got to find a new tribe, I guess. But what's interesting is how you allowed your experience in the show to transform your life.
It did.
And I would say, like, for me, I was in boot camp. So there's survival mode in a different way.
Mhm.
You're trying to survive your drill instructors. But again, you can't do it alone.
No.
That was an environment where they made it where there is no individualism to a certain extent. You have to rely on each other. And I think through this pandemic and this transition phase coming, we've had to rely on each other in different ways. For me, it was a transformational experience to become a Marine and leave there. I did not leave there the same as I entered there. And I'm going to assume that nobody leaves Survivor the same, that it just sticks with them forever.
It does. It truly, if you walk off that show and you say, this has done nothing for me, then you were there for the wrong reason. Every single survivor that I've ever talked to, because we go to charity events, so of course we're in touch with each other. They all say it has completely changed my life, or it's made me a better person. But here's the thing that's really interesting. You go film the show, and then you go home and you watch yourself on national television. That was hard because you play the game twice, but you also get to see some of your actions, and you go, I said that, I did that. So it also makes you a little more aware of the words that come out of your mouth, the thoughts that go in your head.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us go through challenges, but we're not filmed going through challenges where we watch the tape at the end.
That's exactly right.
And it's also edited too. So, I mean, there's a lot more footage than they put in there. And sometimes the footage may not be what you wanted in there.
Exactly.
I have to ask you, how often do people talk to you about that pair of shoes?
All the time. I will forever be known as the woman on Survivor who stole $1,600 pair of alligator shoes. I lost it. And some of my friends they said to me when we were watching it together, they said, they made you do that. And I said, no, that guy got under my skin. He was making fun of me and I acted out. But that's also a life lesson. How many times does someone get under your skin and you act out, or you say something and as you walk away, you go, I should have never said that.
Yeah.
It's human. We're all human.
I remember seeing the sand go in the shoes and I went, oh, whoa, he must have really pissed her off, but I think, well, okay. Is it true that you did hook him up with some boots at some point?
I did.
Right.
At the finale, I gave him back a pair of ostrich cowboy boots. So it was all good. But 3 days later, after I did that, I did say sorry to him, and he was very angry at me that day. But a couple days later, I believe it was like I said, 3 days later, he did say, you know what, we're good, Holly. Let's forget about it. I have 18 more pairs at home. I don't need to worry about it. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So yeah.
Well, maybe he did some soul searching too and said, what did I do that caused this woman to trash my shoes? You got to reflect on some things.
Yeah.
I think that your message right now, as we go into this transition phase, is so relevant. But I have to ask you, are you noticing as a speaker, are you noticing that when they're asking for you to come out, is it different than pre-pandemic?
It is, because everyone that I booked with, or that I have been booked with and reaching back out to because we're rescheduling, they will say, is there any way that you can relate this story to being in survival mode through a pandemic and coming out?
Yeah.
And Absolutely, because when I came out of Survivor, first of all, I was not the same person. So coming out of this pandemic, it's done one of two things. It's made you a better person, or you're still stuck in the pandemic.
That's right.
So but you have the choice. You make that choice. And I tell them, I will tell clients, absolutely, I can relate it, because when I came out of Survivor, I remember walking out of tribal council and I was crying. And I thought to myself, did I just do that? And that's probably how some of us are coming out of this pandemic. Hey,
Yeah.
14 months ago, would have we thought that we were going to have to wear masks for 14 months and we were going to be working from home for a year? Never. But you know what? We survived. We survived. My heart goes out to those people that lost loved ones through the pandemic.
Yeah.
That I just, my heart breaks for them. But at the same time, as businesses and so forth, that's what you have to think about. And even if your business didn't make it, you had to close your business, think about thriving and opening it back up and see what happens. So there's always choices that everybody can make.
Well, and what's interesting too, as a fellow speaker, I get asked to speak and they said, what do you have right now? Because we can tell that people are different.
Oh, yes.
And so, I used to be a leadership coach. Mm-hmm. Now I'm a leading through chaos coach.
Yeah.
And they just want to know how to handle it. We're not prepared for it.
No. And I do talk about that in my program as well. And I pull up a slide that says adapt to the now. If you need to be aware and be prepared. Yeah. And what that causes is after you're aware and you're prepared, then you have to think about naming it. Okay, what's going to happen?
That's right.
And too many times when we name it, that's when negativity comes in. And we're like, can we or can't we? I have a new saying in my life, and I'm trying to share that. And I just shared it in Milwaukee. I spoke and I shared it for the first time on stage, and it's called erase and replace. When you get a bad thought in your mind, or when you think you can't do something, you need to erase that thought and you need to replace it with positivity. Even if you have to speak it, if you have to shout it, if you have to whisper it to yourself. But that's what we need to start thinking about, is erase and replace those thoughts. And then, of course, like I said, it becomes your choice.
Yeah.
We all have the freedom of thinking, and you are what you think.
But those are the choices, right? So, that's right.
Yeah.
Those are choices we have. We have the choice to erase and replace.
Yes.
And that's empowering right now, because I think that so many people they don't know what to do right now. I know for me as a coach in business, I'll speak with business leaders or even their team members, and I ask how people are feeling. Mm-hmm. And the most common thing I'm hearing right now is I feel lost.
Yeah.
I just don't know what direction to go in. I don't know what to say to my people. I don't know what they need. And I think erase and replace, that can apply to so many scenarios.
So many things. And I'm really seeing what people need right now is kindness. People need great words spoken. People need other people. I just said the most important thing we'll have in our lives is relationships with other people. And we haven't had that. We've had it behind the computers, but we haven't had it face to face. So I believe that that's what people need. I had a friend during the pandemic. She called every single person on her contact list. And it took her an entire week, but she called them all. And she said, I'm doing this to check up on everyone.
Wow.
And that one gesture, we talked for 10 minutes on the phone, is something I will never forget, because she gave of her time to call every single contact in her phone and just to make sure that everybody was okay and everybody was doing well. So that's why the importance of needing other people. That's what we need right now.
I mean, she did those little pep talks, right?
Yes, exactly.
She pulled a Coach Johnson.
Yes, exactly. Well, we all need one.
Oh my gosh. Some of us need it every day during the pandemic, right?
Yes.
Well, okay. So you mentioned about being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
We have to prepare. And did you do prep work before you went on the show? Like how do you prepare for that? Because you kind of know what's coming.
Yes.
So this is a two-part question. I'll ask the first one. What did you do to prepare for the show?
Well, I read some books on psychology, how to read people. How to read people's body language, because lot of times when you're talking to people, and one of the biggest things, if they're lying, they're not going to make eye contact with you, or they're going to start moving their hands like this. And I caught that in my first lie, that someone lied to me on the show. They started moving their hands, and I was like, they are completely lying. So I read books on body language.
You were up on it.
I was like, wait a minute, body language, eye contact, and those things. And then I hired a personal trainer. I was probably in one of the best shapes of my life. My stepdad, he set up challenge courses for me. He took these bricks, and then he put like wire on top of the bricks so I could learn how to crawl under the wire. And we did have an obstacle course where we had to crawl under this thing and move with our arms. So it was very beneficial.
Wow.
But that's basically what I did. I worked out a lot, I read a lot of books, but you're always prepared. But it wasn't until I got out there that I went, okay, now I need to use what I taught myself, and I need to put this into action. And that's one of the first mistakes I made. I didn't. I got out there and I let all these bad thoughts play with my mind.
That's right. If your mindset gets off,
yes,
your actions are off.
100%.
You know, I enlisted in the Marine Corps when I was 17 and a half. And so I had about 6 months of prep work, getting prepared. And your recruiters help you get prepared. You go on some runs, you do some marching. It's not boot camp, but they're preparing you. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of think you know what to expect until you get there.
Exactly.
And I feel for me, the biggest unknown that came to light, it wasn't the physical challenges, and there were a lot of them. It was the mental game in boot camp. So what did you discover when you got there that you couldn't have anticipated or prepared for? What was the biggest challenge that you faced that you didn't see it coming?
I needed to believe in myself. I had never really done anything on my own. I was married right out of high school, had 3 children, did so much for my children.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. I'm very, very grateful. But it was truly doing something on my own, that I had to do this. I didn't have someone holding my hand, or I didn't have someone encouraging me. I had to encourage myself.
Yeah.
I had to inspire myself, because in this game, you can't really trust anyone. And you need to remember that it is a game.
Yeah.
So for myself, I believe it was, I had to have more confidence in myself. I had to have a better attitude. I had to recognize those things myself. Instead of someone speaking them to me. We all get down and we all go and vent to friends or family. And what do? Oh, Erik, you can do this. Come on, Erik, we know you can do this.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that out in the middle of the jungle. It was a lot of self-talk. I had to do this one on my own. That was the biggest thing for me personally.
It's interesting. It's pretty profound, because you go in there by yourself. Mm-hmm. Then you become part of a tribe, but you're not sure who you can trust. So you have to go back to trusting yourself, believing in yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, and just that mental game. I mean, the pressure of it in 5 days, you know, you had that kind of breakdown moment, but then you made it so much further. When you left the show, what did it do for your confidence? You know, now, then and now, how do you rely on that belief level now that you earned from the show?
I believe I would have never been a speaker if I wouldn't have done the show. Yes, it did help my speaking career, but by the show giving me confidence, I definitely am now able to go on stage and speak. And, you know, I just did make a comment. I have to back up a little bit, because I said, you know, I was alone. We aren't alone. We are never, ever alone. And I speak of 6 words when I speak, and that's my number 1 word is faith. You know, I would go out into the jungle and find a log, and I'd sit on the log and I'd watch the sunset and I would pray. And that's one thing we need to remember as well. We are never alone. So I truly, you know, that gave me confidence to get up in front of people and say, you know what? And I still struggle with reading after I speak. I have to read critiques. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter where you're from, who you are. not everybody's going to like your presentation. Not everybody's going to
That's
like
right.
your work. You will never satisfy everyone. And that was really hard for me to accept as a speaker.
Yeah.
But that's life. That is truly life.
Because you take it personally when you hear it.
Yes. And then I read a book, and I actually say this on stage. But why do we as humans, if we focus on the negative things again? Because if you walked into a room and 50 people were in the room and 49 people say something nice about you and one person says something bad about you, what do we have a tendency to remember as we leave the room? There we are again. So now when I read my critiques, I read them as, if someone doesn't like my presentation, I look at those things and I go, okay, why didn't they like it? Is there something I can change? Is there something I can do? So I turn it around. I erase and I replace.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it, like,
Yeah.
this is a perfect time to erase and replace.
Yeah.
No, but you're absolutely right. And I think that the world we live in right now, people are sharing their opinions or even negative statements at a higher level than they've ever shared in the world, I feel. Or now they even have the cyber or social bullying, right? So they're even doing it there. And you're right. If you get a critique, as a speaker or a coach, you could have 49 people tell you it was awesome and one person say this. I think what you said is so important. You've really got to look at possibly what was their motivation for saying it.
Yes.
Because at first that one just stings so much. I remember when I first started speaking, I would just share my story, and I'm a Marine who became a caregiver. So I've been a caregiver for 20 plus years with my wife. She's had 4 battles of 4 different cancers. She died of cardiac arrest, came back to life.
You are a survivor. Oh.
Yeah, she is the real survivor.
Yeah, you both are.
But one of my books, I'm writing a caregiver book because caregivers survive in a different way. But it was interesting because sometimes those negative comments, you wanted to erase them, and it was a little harder than you thought. And I remember when I started speaking, very much like you, I was given advice by another speaker, and they said, you have a powerful story. Share your story and just be you. And I'm like,
yes, exactly.
Okay. So then when you're so genuine, you feel like you're genuine up there, like, all right, I'm going to share a story. I was in the Marine Corps. Then I became a caregiver. Then I ran a media company in Southern California for 7 years, and we had all this growth. And then somebody shoots down a portion of it. If it's just your story, it feels like you're getting attacked. And I remember one time somebody said, I just can't relate to the Marine Corps and that whole military thing. And I'm like, well, man, I'm not trying to enlist. You don't have to enlist. I was sharing, like, yes. I don't have to go on Survivor to benefit from the fact that you were there. You know what I mean? So no, I can't relate to Survivor because I haven't been there, but I'm not going to get mad at you for being there. And it's amazing. Sometimes people, I think sometimes as a speaker, we're going to inspire a lot of people, but I feel that you cause people to have that self-reflection, and maybe that's
absolutely
hard for them to.
You might think they're going through something, or maybe they had a bad experience with something that you're talking about, and it kind of triggered a bad thought from them.
That's right.
So the reason we get on stage is we tell our stories, we have a message, and every time I get up on stage, I think if people can just walk out of the room with 1 or 2 things, they don't have to think of everything. They don't have to take everything away if they don't want to, but if they can just take a few things away, that's my personal goal.
So I know for me, there's certain things that happen before, during, or after, but as a speaker, when you're up there sharing your personal story, you're sharing your heart with people, and then you've taken your story and put together, here's some steps you can take on your journey. What's the greatest part that happens to you after you speak and you're pouring yourself out? Are there some things that stand out to you that are the most rewarding?
Everyone in that entire room is rewarding. I not everybody comes up to me after I speak, but the ones that do, I usually get, I grew up a lot like you did, or your message really, I think there's so many comments I get, but this one comment that I remember, I talk about growing up in an abusive family, and my father was an alcoholic, and he was abusive. And my family lived behind this closed door. And I bring that in and I say, I'm not the true survivor. My mom is, because she is. She worked 3 jobs, raised 3 kids. She worked so hard and she never complained.
Right.
And I talk about how in my life, I've always gone back. And every time I've made a mistake, I blamed it on my past. Well, I grew up and I didn't have a good childhood. And that's kind of where I would go. And I said, we need to get rid of the chip that we have on our shoulder, because the biggest thing that you can live with in your life is a grudge. And there was one time I had a lady come up to me after my presentation, and I knew she wanted to tell me something personal, because she stood back and she waited till everybody left.
You can tell the way they stand.
Yes. And I was like, she needs to tell me something. And she walked up, she grabbed my hand, and the tears started flowing.
Wow.
And she said, I have a huge grudge because I went through the exact same thing you did. And you just made me realize that I need to get rid of that grudge. I need to get rid of that chip. And I've had so many wonderful comments. I mean, I from people about them. And that hit me, because I thought, wow, she is ready to change.
You enhanced her life.
Yeah. And Erik, I don't get on stage for myself. I'm on stage for the people. I'm on stage for the audience. That's why I love to have fun on stage. I love to look at people. I love to smile at people, because it's not about the speaker. It is about your audience. It's about the people. That's why you're there.
I'll tell you a story I don't share very often is so I had the idea to form my company, Think Great. I was the VP of a successful media company. Things were great. I just felt like I should do something with that experience. So I wrote Think Great on a napkin. I was so glad I had an awesome title for the company, or a name for the company. I went home and shared it with my wife. She goes, that's a great name, but what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm just going to teach people to think great. I don't know how, but I know. She goes, you're probably going to have to speak and write books. And I said, well, I really don't know how to write any books. And I suffer from glossophobia, the fear of public speaking. So I said, all right, well, maybe this wasn't the best idea, but I started to just share with passion things I was moved with. And that really helps me to get on stage. Even when I don't want to get on there, if I think I'm going to impact somebody, that's the biggest motivator for me.
It is. It is. And just truly being yourself. That's another thing. People, when you look at people, your friends, there's family, we all have a story, and we can look great from the outside. We can just like, you have it all.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that present that like everything is perfect. Nobody has a perfect life.
They don't.
So that's another thing that we need to remember, that everyone has a story. And I think that's another thing. I get on stage and I talk about our 3 wonderful children and how I was on Survivor. And then I say, and this is how I grew up. And it makes people realize, okay, what are you going to do? We all have those moments.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I can say it today, because it's the truth. We all have a story that we could tell.
And we may all have a grudge or a chip or something that we need to erase.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question from one speaker to another. When I started speaking, it was harder for me to tell the personal side of the story than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And I would get choked up there. So I'm not supposed to, because I'm a Marine, and but I knew I was going to start my speech off with, I was in the Marine Corps, which I didn't get choked up on that one. But when I got to telling the parts about being Gina's caregiver, there was something about all the eyes on you from the audience. Mm-hmm. People were all in on that side of the story. And I couldn't get through my story for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. It was a declining scale, but in the beginning I got choked up and I have to say, hold on, I'm sorry. And do you ever get that emotional rush back when you start telling your personal story?
Every single presentation, every single program I do. I talk about my mom, I get choked up. I talk about my son at the end. When I got home, he wrapped his arms around me and he said he was proud of me. And I mean, how many 24-year-old sons would walk up to their mom? You do. And you do, because you take your audience first on a roller coaster. Yeah. And you can see them smiling and laughing. And then you say, I grew up in an abusive alcoholic family, or I am a caretaker, and you start talking about your wife. And for me, what helped me get through that is I sat down with my mom and I said, Mom, I need I need your guidance. I need your permission. I need for you to say that this is okay for me to talk about. And I remember my mom looking at me and saying, absolutely 100%. I want you to talk about this because I wish I would have heard this message when I was going through the situation. So that's what you need to think about is you're a caretaker. How many caretakers out there don't know where to turn? They don't know other caretakers. They're trying to survive just to get through.
Right.
I know of people who are caretakers, and you may have someone out in the audience that's a caretaker that needs to hear your story for inspiration. So that's why you have to tell those personal stories.
Well, I found it therapeutic.
Yes.
You know, we've been through things, and then as you share it, you're able to articulate what you were really feeling, because it is kind of confusing to put all that, you know, I wasn't in an abusive relationship or an abusive family growing up. So, but there are people that will relate to that.
Yeah.
Or like you said, there's people that are going to relate to being that caregiver or whatever they were doing. And so I feel it takes a lot of courage to share those deepest parts of your story.
Yeah, it really does.
But what motivates me is when somebody comes up afterwards and they might say, hey, you know, my mom had cancer.
Yes.
Or I'm a caregiver, or my uncle was in the Marine Corps or the Army or the Navy. And, you know, you connected emotionally with somebody. Then all the steps that you share with them, then they're more apt to hear it. They just want that genuineness.
Yes, now, that I agree 100%.
Yeah. And I know for me, probably a lot like you, I didn't take to the stage because I like hearing myself speak.
I didn't expect this to happen. I was like,
right.
So many people say, I have people say, I want to get into speaking. How did you get started? And I'm like, I just started to talk, you know, and I remember my very first presentation, it was to 50 people and I was done. And two ladies walked up to me and they said, we would love for you to speak. And I went, what is going on? And the speech just kind of turned into the next. So you're right. I truly believe that it's that personal connection. It's that with the audience. And you have to make it about the people. And that's a whole nother life lesson. There's too many people that make it about themselves and they don't make it about the people.
Well, and I've had the opportunity to hear you deliver your message, and the belief level that comes out, the confidence and the passion for helping people is just really unparalleled. And I think that's what people pick up on. But I have to ask you, you know, we followed a similar path. While I was not in Nicaragua, I became a speaker and an author. And you have 2 books.
Yes, I do.
I have to ask you, your first book, Your Winner Within. Was that your first one?
That was my first one.
Okay. Yes. So at what point did the idea come to you and you're like, all right, I'm writing a book now?
Well, on the 3rd year that I was speaking, when I had a bureau reach out to me and they said, well, you know, we like to have speakers who have possibly a book. It's not a requirement, but it would be kind of nice. And a website and maybe some promo video. And I went,
sure.
Okay. I had absolutely no idea how to start. I was like, I can't write a book. I have to make a promo tape. And here I went. I started doing some research. And that was kind of my first time that someone put a bug in my ear and said, maybe something. And I thought, okay, what should I do with my book? So I speak about 8 words in my Survivor presentation: faith, attitude, determination, confidence, desire, and perseverance. So I took those 8 words and I put them into chapters in my book.
Nice.
But I didn't write about Survivor. I wrote about like my family. When Charlie and I almost lost all 3 of our children in a car accident. That was my faith chapter. Wow. And that's how I did it. So if I can write a book, you can write a book. Anyone can write a book. I really believe that. Yes.
You know, it's funny. I wrote a book on goal setting. So my first book was called The Goal Formula. And I write a book on how to set goals during tough times. And I actually mentioned in there that I was nervous about writing the first book because I started to think about all the what ifs. And I remember writing at the top of my list of what ifs, what if my book sucks? I'm like, all right, well, I don't want that. And what if I can't find a publisher? What if I can't? What if I can't? And I actually found somebody who wrote books, and I talk about this. I found out that Helen Keller, who was blind, deaf, mute, wrote 12 books. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And she was born in the 1800s. I'm like, all right, I think I could squeak one out. I can at least get one. And it really became the book writing process, just like writing a speech, right?
Yes.
The book writing process was very therapeutic for me too.
Mm-hmm.
You
It
know,
was.
'cause you're sharing your story in the books as well.
Yeah. I would take a notepad and I would put it on the bedstand beside my bed. Because I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning, and we've all had that. My head would start spinning and all these thoughts would go through my head, and I would grab my paper and I would start writing. And now if something comes up, what I do is I grab my phone and I start speaking in my phone, and then I can relate it to my book. So yeah, it's still selling. And my other book is called Write Yourself a Note.
Yeah.
Which is my next speech that I'm working very hard on. I've given it a few times. I'm trying to perfect it. I
love that title, Write Yourself a Note.
Well,
awesome.
We've actually, when you really think about it, we can make a case that writing has actually become a lost art.
Yes.
Because I talk about that, but it shouldn't be, because there's so many things. But I basically have 4 types. I have pen to paper notes, mental notes, long-term notes, and notes to others. And those are the things that I focus on in my presentation. But that too just came to me. I was in Anaheim, California, speaking to a group of 850 people, and I had to do breakouts. And my first breakout I just felt like there wasn't energy in the room, and I just felt there wasn't, something didn't happen. And I just said, everybody take out a piece of paper. Do you have a piece of paper? And they all had folders from the conference. I said, everybody have a pen. If you don't, ask your neighbor. And I said, I want you to write yourself a note. And I went, write yourself a note, write yourself a note. And I said, I've always thought, my experience has always been, when you write things down and you see it on paper, it jumps up at you. You put it out in the open, and your to-do lists, you cross them off. You have the sense of accomplishment. So let's take writing and let's look at it in a different way. I said, I want you to write your note. If you want to share that with me, great. If you don't, I totally understand. The entire room, people started talking to each other. They got up from their chairs. They were sharing their notes. They were sharing their ideas. And I went, this is a whole nother program. This is a whole nother book. So
how awesome is that? And you're right. It is a lost art form.
It is. It really is. It is.
I've done sales training where I'll say, what are some of your follow-up touches? And they'll mention some things. I said, does anybody write a personal note? And you'll see people go, that's a great idea. That used to be the idea. That's what you did. And now it's that lost art form. It's like Indiana Jones. I feel like I discovered the lost ark. Here's the lost art form. Write a note. And they're like, that's brilliant. And I'm like, no, it's always been there. We just forgot about it.
Right. And I know it's 2021 and you're probably thinking times have changed. We have email, text messaging. You can send a thank you through an emoji and it's supposed to. No, every single program I do, I send this out. Thank you note. Every time I speak, a handwritten thank you note, because it means so much more to people than getting a text message or an email or a phone call.
If you want to be memorable,
write a thank you note. That you see the writing, you've put time into that. They put time into you. All you need to do is take 10 minutes, write a note, pop a stamp, and you're ready to go.
You're golden, and they will remember that.
They will.
So I got to share a story. When we lived in California, and not too far from Anaheim, actually.
Okay.
But my wife and I grew up out there. And at one point we were taking care of both of our moms, teenage sons. We had a house full. And then the boys were on water polo, and their friends would come over and eat a lot. And so we would shop at this grocery store out there. I believe the one that we shopped at was Ralph's. And we probably dropped a lot of money there. Mm-hmm. And at one point, my wife gets a note from the manager, handwritten, thanking us for our business, which said, all right, we're spending a lot of money at Ralph's. But I remember we were driving home somewhere. We needed to stop off at the store, and there was one closer. And I said, well, why don't we just go to Vons? She goes, we can't go to Vons. I said, well, we're right here. She goes, we need to go to Ralph's because that guy wrote her a handwritten note. And so I drove further and we spent more money there, but the reality is it is powerful. And
It
I
is
love
very
that. Write
powerful.
yourself, and I love it. Write yourself a note, not just text yourself, but write yourself.
Yeah. And after every chapter, what I did is I left some empty pages so they can read the chapter, and then I ask them a question, and then they write a note. But there's so many things. There's mental notes. I didn't have paper and pen when I played Survivor. Everything was taken away from me.
That's
So
right.
I had to use my mental notepad, and I talk about that. How I used my mental notes to get me through that game. So there's so many different forms of writing and so many different ways that we can do it.
So are you able to share any insights on your next book with us? What it's about?
Yes. I've had so many people ask me that. I really would like to write a book on raising children. I had three.
That's a whole different level of survival.
Whole different level. It's completely different of everything I've done.
Yeah.
But I'm not a perfect parent, and I wish I could have just read some chapters on, what I could have done differently, what I think I did right. But I just think that sharing some of my experiences with my children, and how Charlie and I pulled ourselves together, because there were, 3 teenagers at one time. That's very hard. And that's what I would really like to talk about, is just raising children. It's a different world.
People need to read that book. I know you haven't written it yet, but I already know you've got an audience out there for it.
Yeah, it is. It's we need to spend more time with our children. We need to get our children away from iPads. We need to get them away from cell phones. And I know that's what they do.
That's right.
But how many times do we see children going outside and playing? I played basketball and kickball in our backyard as a child, and we don't see them anymore.
They're all inside texting each other, sitting next to each other.
Yes.
Like, you need to go out to the playground. They're like, what's
that? Yes, exactly.
So
yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I've started on it. So every time I get a thought about my children or an experience I want to share, then I take my phone and I record it, or I write it down.
Well, I'm ready for the book, because I have 2 sons that are out of the house. So they're going to be 32 and 30 this year.
Okay.
But we have a teenage daughter in the house. So Holly, please finish the book soon. We need help. We're in survival mode. No, she's awesome. She's a great kid. Okay, so I do have to ask you, you've mentioned it a number of times, and I kind of saved the best part for last, I feel, but I want you to talk to us a little bit about how important faith is for you, especially during challenges.
Yes, and everyone has their own opinion. Everyone has their own beliefs. So I don't want to offend anyone when I talk about myself, because this is truly me. I am a Christian. I am a believer. And I did a lot of praying. And even today, through my devotion, I read my devotion this morning, and it was wonderful, because it talked about, like, even when our lives are going, everything's going right, why do we always let our minds think, okay, what's next to go bad, because everything's going perfect? And so I'm a true believer in that everything happens for a reason, and God has a purpose, and we need to believe in that purpose. Our lives are not going to be perfect. Nobody's lives are. But I feel like it can't be in just hard times that we turn to God. I feel like we need to pray, and we need to believe, even when our lives, everything is going right. Yeah. So I prayed a lot during that game. I remember laying in the hut shivering, and I would just fold my hands and I would pray. And so I truly believe that that's how I got through that game as well. Jimmy Johnson giving me that pep talk helped, but faith was definitely the number one.
Well, it's interesting. I have my devotional right here. I read it every morning.
Perfect.
I think we need to recharge that spiritual battery that we have.
Absolutely. Yes, we do.
I always say, people
share it. We need to share it with others. And unfortunately, even I don't want to bring this in a negative way, but I have to be very careful the way I say it. Yeah. Because not everyone believes like I believe, and that's basically why I say faith. I don't ever bring a certain religion in, and I say every tomorrow has 2 handles you can take a hold of. You can either hold on to the handle of faith, or you can hold on to the handle of anxiety. And I had a gentleman come up to me after a presentation, and he said, when you talk about holding on to that handle of faith, are you talking about faith in God or faith in yourself? And I looked back at him and I said, I leave that open to you, because that's how you want to believe it. Yeah. It's, I can tell you how I believe, but I want you to take my story as the way you believe in faith.
Well, and isn't it interesting, whether you're talking about faith or surviving a challenge or writing yourself a note, or I talk about leadership or sales, over the years, you refine how you deliver your message.
Oh, yes.
Because I remember when I first, and sometimes those critics, they give you the best kick to the gut, but it hurts. And I was saying how important goal setting was during the time period when Gina had cancer. And yes, we prayed, we had our verses, but the things that we could do as two human beings outside of the spiritual side was set goals. And I remember I gave a presentation on saying how important goal setting was. And a lady came up to me afterwards and she said, you know what? Goal setting doesn't cure cancer. And I'm like, whoa, did I say it in a way that I know I didn't say that, but I had to be very careful. And I even say now, let me just pre-frame this, that, goal setting doesn't cure cancer. It'll help you get through it though.
Yes.
And so it really became important. Those comments like that, I feel as a speaker or a writer, those are very important so that we can get that message. Because what's up here, it's hard to get it in a book to say it exactly like you're thinking it. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know. But
no, that's very true. And Erik, you know what? There's such a thing as criticism and constructive criticism.
Yeah.
I had someone say to me once in my critique, she should not walk in front of the projector. And that was right away when I started speaking. And I went, he's right. I should not walk in front of the projector. And then I had another person say,
did you write a note to yourself?
Yes, right. No, don't walk in front of the projector. So that is constructive criticism. So you have to remember there's constructive criticism and then there's criticism. Right. And you have to look at those two things and go, okay, what is going to make me a better speaker by them writing this down? And what is something, are they writing that down because they're angry with their life, or are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, during any type of challenge, you find out who's who.
Oh, right.
And you found out. I'm glad that you have the courage to speak about faith. It's a big part for Gina and I as well. We're Christians and we share that. In fact, in my book, The Goal Formula, I talk about goals falling into different categories. There's fun goals and financial goals and fitness goals. But the number one goal I talk about is your goals of faith, your spiritual journey. So it's important to us. And I remember when I went into boot camp, I was 18. I wasn't really big into going to church. When I found out is during chaos, everybody found Jesus. Because on Sunday, the drill instructor said, you can go to see the chaplain for an hour today, or you can stay here in the barracks. Every guy went to church. It's like, all right. And at church, they didn't yell at you. So we're like, this place is great. But, I think the biggest challenge with faith is after you're out of the obstacle to keep the faith going,
That's why taking those few minutes every morning or how long or at night and having some alone time or family time. I shared my devotion this morning on our family group text with my family because a couple members of our family are going through a real stressful time. And I thought, you know what? We all need to hear this message. That's whether you're going through a hard time or you're not, everybody needs to hear this message. So we need to remember that daily.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, as we bring it all together, if there's somebody listening that's just looking to take steps in the right direction, kind of pull themselves out of a slump and start heading towards their own level of greatness, do you have any key pointers for them, some things that they should keep in mind right now as they embark on that journey?
Well, we're all going through a lot of change.
Yeah.
And one thing I would really like to leave this with is you have to keep your circle strong. You have to keep those people that are surrounding you, the people that are in your circle. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, but a person that if you are feeling down or you need to vent, you can call them and they're going to understand and they're going to listen. They're not going to make it about them. Relationships are huge in life, and surrounding yourselves with the right people are huge. My mother always told me you are measured by the company you keep. And if you're around people who are negative and who are constantly putting people down, you're going to become those people.
Yeah.
So we have to move forward. We have to get along. We have to have good relationships with other people. And that doesn't mean that we're always going to agree with people, but we need to listen to other people's opinion. People they judge right away, and we need to step back and we need to listen. And if you don't agree, you don't have to say you don't agree, but you have to say, I really value your opinion, and this is the way I think. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of anxiety. But
There
if you
is.
just work on those little steps every day, it's amazing what will happen.
That's awesome. And negative people, you can vote them off your own island.
You can
You
snuff
know?
their torch immediately.
Exactly. I
Yes.
like that. Holly, you are absolutely amazing. I love your energy. I love
Oh,
your message. I just love the passion you have for helping people. And I know people listening today were inspired. I can already feel it. And
thank
can you
you.
just tell us if somebody wants to reach out and connect with you and learn more or possibly bring you in and speak to their audience, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I have a website, www.hollyhoffman.com. And then I also through email, holly@hollyhoffman.com.
Awesome.
So you can Google and my name as well, and it comes right up. But Erik, I can't thank you enough for having me. You're the one that did this. You're the one that asked me to be here. So I truly, truly thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you in return. This was great for me. You got me pumped up. I'm ready to erase and replace. I'm ready to write myself some notes.
Good.
I just think that one of the best parts about hosting this podcast is having guests like you on that get me re-energized, and we all need it right now.
Yes, we do. Yes.
So, Holly, I just want to say thanks so much for blessing all of us with your message today. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.